300 wolves watched him say her name. It wasn't mine. A silver collar, another woman's throat. The sound of a pulse breaking. He didn't look at me once. A cursed bloodline. 2 centuries of winter sealed into a man who hasn't been touched in 13 years. The mating ceremony at Blackthorn. His pack, his rules. A blood oath that could end a 3-generation war. Or start one. He told me only if I decided. I sat by his fire. He sat at his desk. Neither of us slept, her hand on a frozen wrist. His pulse, slow as a man afraid of his own heart. Wolves howling across the high pass. Silver blades drawn in a courtyard. His hands wrapped around an enemy's throat. Her palms going gold in the dark. A frost-covered room. A bond that was never supposed to catch. Everyone thought I was the casualty. You walked out. And nobody followed. Somebody had to. Picture this. You have spent 14 years waiting for one man to keep one promise. You are standing in your wedding dress. 300 wolves are watching. And then he calls another woman's name. Elena Vance had 3 seconds to decide what kind of woman she was going to be for the rest of her life. She chose wrong, and the right choice was waiting outside. The great hall of Ironhold smelled like pine smoke and ceremonial incense and old money. The kind that buys 1,000 candles for a single night, because tradition demands it. Silver banners. Vaulted ceilings carved from black oak. A floor polished so cleanly that you could see the faces of the dead alphas looking back at you from the wood. Elena stood in the front row. White silk. Silver thread. Moonstones woven into a dark braid that fell past her shoulders. She had been dressed since dawn. She had not eaten. She could not have kept anything down. This was the claiming moon. The most sacred night in pack tradition. The night when unmated alphas chose. The night when promises sealed before birth were finally honored in front of witnesses who could never unsee them. And every single wolf in that hall knew Tristan Marrow was going to choose her, because the contracts had been signed before Elena could walk. Because her father, Edric Vance, had been the most loyal beta in 3 generations. Because Tristan's father had taken her tiny hand on the day of her naming and pressed it into his son's palm. This one, he had said. This one belongs with ours. So this was supposed to be the easy part. Iris pressed against her shoulder, 19 years old, smaller than her older sister, softer in the ways that mattered. You're shaking. I'm cold. You're not cold. I'm cold, Iris. A pause. The kind of pause sisters know how to weaponize. He loves you, did he? Elena turned the question over in the back of her mind that she would turn a coin over in her pocket. She had been turning it for months. The dinners he had not shown up to. The way his eyes slid past her in council meetings. The way he had stopped touching her hand when no one was watching. She thought about Celine Greycroft. Celine had arrived from the Western Province 6 months ago. Niece of some lord nobody had heard of. Golden hair down her back. Red gowns that did not belong at a pack court. The kind of woman who laughs with her whole throat exposed. Elena had not paid attention to her. Elena had not thought she needed to. The drums started. 3 slow beats. Then silence. Tristan climbed the dais. 24 years old, 2 years into his alphahood. He had inherited the title the way a son inherits a debt. Too young, too sudden, too publicly. His father had died in a border raid against Blackthorn Keep, and he had been crowned in his own father's blood. He looked the part tonight. Tall, broad. Dark hair brushed back. Autumn leaf eyes catching the candlelight. He looked at no one. The high priestess waited. Ancient. Skin like vellum. She held the ceremonial collar between her palms. Silver links thin as a heartbeat. Blessed by 12 generations of priestesses before her. Tristan took the collar. The hall stopped breathing. I have made my choice. His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. A choice that will strengthen our pack and secure our future. Elena set her shoulders. 2 seconds. 3. Just say it. His eyes swept the hall and kept going. Past her, Celine Greycroft. The world crack just once, soft. The kind of crack you hear when you step on a frozen lake and you are not sure yet if you are about to drown. Elena did not scream, did not move, did not even blink. She watched a tall blonde woman in a red gown rise from the 3rd row. She watched her glide forward. She watched Tristan place the silver collar around that other woman's throat. She watched the mate bond, the thing she had been growing inside her chest since she was 8 years old, stretch past her body and snap toward someone else. It hurt the way a limb hurts when the surgeon takes it. It hurt the way her father had hurt when the messenger came back from the border with his sword, and not his body. Iris made a sound. Small, wounded. The hall began to murmur. Some of the murmurs were pity. Some were not. Some were old grudges finally finding their reward. Elena turned. She walked. 300 yards of stone floor. 300 yards of stairs. 300 yards of the worst walk of her life, and nobody stopped her. That was the part she would never quite forgive. Not the betrayal. Not the public stripping of every promise she had built her life on. The part she would never forgive was that nobody followed her. Because what no one in that hall understood yet was that the most dangerous man in 3 territories had been standing in the shadow of the courtyard wall for the better part of an hour, waiting, listening to the music, listening for the moment the music stopped. He had heard it stop 90 seconds ago. He had been counting. The night air outside the hall hit her face like cold water, poured from a great height. She had not brought a cloak. She had not thought she would need one. Brides did not bring cloaks. Brides walked from the hall to the Alpha's chambers, and the Alpha's chambers were warm. The courtyard was empty, or it should have been. In a hurry, little wolf. Aelina went very still. She knew that voice. Every wolf in the Northern Territories knew that voice. Children were threatened with that voice. Mothers told stories about that voice to keep their daughters from wandering past the tree line. She turned slowly. Damien Winter stepped out from the dark, 28 years old. Alpha of Blackthorn Keep. Heir of the bloodline. Her bloodline had been killing for 3 generations. His father had killed Tristan's father. Her father had killed his uncle. 3 funerals in 3 years. Black hair, cropped close on the sides, longer on top. A scar that started above his left brow and disappeared into his hairline. Eyes the color of a knife, laid out in moonlight. Silver. Pale. Watching her the way a thing watches another thing it has not decided what to do with yet. He should not have been there. Outsiders were not invited to the Claiming Moon. Outsiders were certainly not invited from Blackthorn Keep. How long have you been standing there? Long enough for what? To know. She held herself the way her father had taught her. Spine straight, voice level. You can grieve later, he used to say. Right now you have to look like a Vance. You shouldn't be here. Neither should you. And yet, silence. You'll be killed if my guards see you. Your guards are inside. Watching their Alpha forget the woman who was supposed to be his Luna. A small smile. Not warm. I think we both know I am safer out here tonight than you are. That landed. That landed harder than it should have. Whatever this is, whatever you came to say, I am not in a generous mood. Good. I am not here to be generous. What do you want? He took a step closer. The cold from him rolled out like weather. I have an offer. I am not interested. You haven't heard it. I don't need to. Yes, you do. Another step. She could see the silver flecks in his irises now. She could see his breath ghosting in the cold air. His breath should not have been ghosting. The night was cold, but not that cold. Take my name instead. Take Blackthorn. And for the rest of his life, every time Tristan Marrow walks into a room, he will look around for you. And he will find you, standing next to me, wearing my mark. Carrying my house, she laughed. It came out wrong. Short, bitter. The laugh of a woman who had laughed at very few things in the last hour but was prepared to laugh at this one. Because the alternative was to start crying in front of an enemy. You're not serious. I am not in the habit of being unserious. My people killed your uncle, and mine killed your father's second. You hate my pack. I hate your Alpha. That is a different sentence. She stared at him. Why? His answer came slowly. Not because he had to search for it. Because he was choosing to tell her the true reason instead of the easy one. Because you did not beg. What? Every woman I have ever seen humiliated like you were humiliated tonight has done one of 3 things. They begged, they cried, or they screamed at someone who was not the actual cause of the pain. You did none of them. You walked. So I know enough. She looked away, the lit windows of the great hall, the shadows of dancers moving behind them. The music had started again. They were already dancing. They had not even waited for her to be gone from the courtyard. What would it look like? Formal mating bond. Public ceremony at Blackthorn. You take the position of Luna with full authority. You sit at the council. You are not a prisoner. You are not a trophy. And the bond, marked, sealed. Both sides. Consummated a beat. Only if you decide it is. You don't expect love. I do not expect anything I have not earned. And if I want out, after 1 year, you may petition for separation. I will not contest it. I am not in the habit of keeping prisoners. Unwilling people make terrible Lunas. 1 year. 1 year. The wind shifted. She caught his scent. Winter pine. Old smoke. Something colder underneath. Something that did not smell like any wolf she had ever stood close to. A piece of her mind tried to flag it. A bigger piece of her mind told it to be quiet. Why me? I told you. Tell me again, because you walked out. And nobody followed. That was the line that did it. That was the line that closed the deal before her mouth caught up. She held out her hand. He took it. His skin was ice. Not cold. Ice. The way river stones are ice in February. The shock of it traveled up her arm and lodged somewhere behind her sternum. She did not pull away. Now, Iris, your sister stays. She is not in danger. Tristan does not gain by harming a child of the Vance line tonight. You will see her again. I promise you that. And I do not waste promises. She walked out of the courtyard of the only home she had ever known, with the alpha of her father's killers, and she did not look back at the great hall. That was the moment her life ended. That was also the moment her life began. The horses were waiting at the tree line, 6 of them. 6 Blackthorn warriors mounted in dark leather. Faces shadowed under hoods, breath fogging the air. None of them looked at her. None of them spoke. Which was its own kind of mercy. She had never ridden through a night that long before. The first hour was the worst. Because the first hour was the hour where her body had not yet caught up to her decision. Her body still thought she should be inside that hall, drinking ceremonial wine, letting Tristan rest his hand on the small of her back, the way he had practiced doing in public. Her body kept trying to turn the horse around. Her body kept asking, "Who do you think you are?" She did not answer it. She just rode. By the second hour, her hands had stopped shaking. By the third hour, her teeth had stopped chattering. By the fourth, the moonstones in her hair had begun to ache where they had been pinned into her scalp. She pulled them out one by one and dropped them on the trail behind her. Tiny pale stones that the dawn would eventually find, that no one would ever connect to a runaway Luna. Damian rode ahead. He did not speak to her. He did not check on her. He gave orders to his men with short words and small gestures, and the men obeyed. There was no warmth in him. There was no performance either. He was not pretending to be a cruel man. He was simply being himself, which was, she would understand later, the only kindness he could have offered her on that first night. Because the absolute last thing Aelina Vance could have survived on that ride was a man who tried to comfort her. They made camp before dawn under a stand of pines. The warriors moved without orders. They built no fire. They cut no branches. They left the forest the way they had found it. A young warrior. Could not have been more than 17. Lean, sharp-eyed. He held a bundle out to her without making eye contact. A cloak, thick, black wool, lined with fur. She took it. She did not say thank you. He had not given her room to. Damian did not come to her. He posted at the eastern edge of the camp. He stood the first watch himself. She slept anyway. Briefly. The way the truly wounded sleep. Not from rest, but from refusal. The second day they crossed into the high pass. The pines thinned. The wind sharpened. The horses slowed. They climbed, and by midday, Aelina could see her own breath in puffs that the wind tore away before they fully formed. She had not eaten since the morning of the ceremony. The 17-year-old warrior. His name turned out to be Joran. He appeared at her stirrup at intervals with strips of dried venison and a flask of water. She did not have the dignity to refuse. She chewed slowly. She drank slowly. Damian stayed ahead. Until the second night. The rogues came out of the rocks above the pass, 8 of them. Maybe 9. Hard to count in the dark. Lean. Hungry. not pack wolves. The kind of men who had been cast out of one pack or another and had spent the intervening years getting good at killing travelers. They came down fast, and from above. They had the high ground. Alina had heard about ambushes her whole life. Her father had described them at the dinner table the way other fathers described business. She had never seen one. She saw one now. The Blackthorn warriors moved like they had rehearsed this exact moment in their sleep. 2 of them dismounted and went up the slope. 2 of them put their bodies between the rogues and her. The other 2 pulled their horses into a loose circle around her. Damien did not say a single word the entire fight. He just walked. He walked into the throat of the ambush the way a man walks into his own kitchen. Slow, unhurried, a long blade in his right hand, the other hand empty and loose. The first rogue who reached him swung an axe. Damien stepped to the side and opened the man's chest with one motion that did not look fast and did not look hard but ended the conversation immediately. The second rogue tried to circle. Damien turned his head an inch, just an inch. The rogue saw whatever was in his face and decided he had urgent business elsewhere. Damien did not let him have urgent business elsewhere. It was over in less than 3 minutes. The high ground was not high enough. The numbers were not high enough. Alina counted 7 bodies and in the snow when the warriors finished sweeping the frog's ass. 2 more had broken and run. None of the Blackthorn men had a serious wound. Damien cleaned his blade on the cloak of the man at his feet. He walked back to her. He stopped in front of her horse. He looked up at her. And for the first time on the entire ride, he looked at her like he was actually seeing her. "You all right?" "Yes, you sure?" "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." He almost smiled. He did not actually smile. He gave a single nod, and turned and walked back to the head of the column, and gave the signal to move. She rode behind him for the rest of the night, and considered, very carefully, what kind of man could walk into 8 knives and come out without losing his rhythm? The answer she came up with was not a comfortable one. She filed it away. Because the alternative was to keep staring at it, and staring at it was not yet something she had the strength to do. But what no one had told her, on the high pass, what she would only understand much later, was that the man at the head of the column was not just dangerous. He was alone. He had been alone for 13 years. And the way he had looked up at her after the ambush was the look of a man who had not been asked if he was all right by anyone in any language since he was 15 years old. They reached the lip of the valley on the 3rd dawn. She had been told stories about Blackthorn keep her entire life. Most of them had been told to her at bedtime by nurses who wanted her to behave. Blackthorn was a fortress built on the bones of dead Vance soldiers. Blackthorn was a black stone tomb where the sun did not reach. Blackthorn was where the winters bred their alphas in the dark. Blackthorn was, in fact, beautiful. That was the first thing she had to make her peace with. Because the propaganda of her childhood had not prepared her for what was actually below her in the valley. A long valley, cradled between 2 snow-capped ridges, a river running silver bright down the middle, a keep built of dark stone, yes, but built well, built old, built with the kind of attention that only generations of people who had loved a place could give to it. Watchtowers at each corner, a market town clinging to the southern slope. Smoke rising in lazy threads from 100 chimneys. She had been told it was a fortress. It was a home. That was almost worse than if it had been a fortress. Damien rode up beside her. The first time he had voluntarily put his horse next to hers in 3 days. "You look surprised. I was told different." "You were told what you were supposed to be told." "By whom?" "Everyone." She turned in the saddle and looked at him. The morning light was kinder to his face than the torchlight had been. The scar was still there, the pale eyes were still there, but there was something in the set of his mouth that she had not noticed in the courtyard. And that something was something very close to weariness. "Were you told the same about Ironhold?" "I was told you bred your women to lie and your men to break their word." She winced. "And now I have met one of your women. And I am revising my opinion of the entire pack. There was no flirtation in it." He said it the way he might have said, "The river runs south." She looked away, first, They rode down into the valley. The gates opened before they reached them. Word had run ahead. Word always runs ahead. By the time the column came under the arch of the outer gate, the courtyard inside was already lined with wolves. 100 of them. Maybe more. Alina did not pretend she could not feel the weight of every single stare. A woman stepped forward from the crowd. Iron gray hair pulled back into a tight braid. A long, dark coat. The kind of face that does not waste effort on small expressions. Mid-50s. Bearing of a woman who had been the actual power behind this, keep for longer than its current self had been alive. You're back. I'm back. And you've brought a guest. No, the pauses. My Luna. That was the first time she had heard him say the word out loud. Out where other ears could catch it. It landed like a stone dropped into a pond. And the ripples went out across that courtyard, and 100 wolves understood, at the same moment, that the world they had woken up in that morning was not the world they were going to go to sleep in that night. The iron-haired woman did not move. She looked at Alina. Alina looked back. Alina Vance, daughter of the late Beta Edric Vance, sister to the girl who remains in Ironhold. Yes, you have your father's eyes. So I've been told he killed my younger brother. The courtyard went very, very still, I know. At the crossing of the Iron Ford, he killed him with a thrown spear. From horseback, in the second year of the war, I know. Do you? I was 8. He came home that night and did not eat. He sat by the fire for a long time, and he did not speak. My mother asked what was wrong, and he said only that he had killed a man today who did not have to die. I knew the next morning from the messengers. I did not know who the man was. But I knew my father grieved him. And I think, if you are who I think you are, you should know that too. She had not meant to say all of that. She had not meant to say any of that. She had said it anyway. The iron-haired woman did not respond for a long moment. Then she did something Alina had not expected. She inclined her head, half an inch. Just enough. I am Rowena, your husband's aunt, the keeper of this household. You will address me as Lady Rowena until I tell you otherwise. Lady Rowena, welcome to Blackthorn. Alina dismounted. A man stepped out of the crowd as her feet hit the stones. Big, broad. A face that had been broken at least twice and put back together both times by people who were not in a hurry. Hatred coming off him in waves. He spat on the stone in front of her boots. Damien moved. He did not draw. He did not raise his voice. He just moved one step closer to the big man. And the big man stopped breathing for the space of 2 heartbeats. Corin, Alpha, you have something to say. I lost 2 sons to her father. I know, at Thornwood, the night raid. The pyres burned 3 days, I know, and you bring her here, to this keep. To stand on stones my sons died defending, yes, a long dangerous silence. Then Damien did something she had not seen coming. He drew the blade at his hip. The crowd flinched. She did not. Some old instinct under her father's training held her absolutely still. He held the blade across his open palms. Both hands. The way a man offers a gift. The way a man offers a body for burial. Then he set the blade down, on the stones. Between himself and Corin, this blade. You all know it. My grandfather carried it at the Iron Ford. My father carried it at the gates of Ironhold. I carried it at Thornwood. It has buried more of your kin than any of you can count, Corin. And every count is justified. Every grief in this courtyard is justified. I am not asking you to forget. I am asking you to put it down, with me. Tonight, Corin's voice came out hoarse. They were good boys. I know they were. The little one was 13, I know. A pause that was not really a pause. It was the shape of a man putting something down that he had been carrying for 12 years. He took one step back, just one. He did not pick the blade up. He did not nod at Alina. He did not give her anything. But he stepped back. And in the language of this pack, on this stone, that step was the only thing she was going to be given today. And it was enough. Damien picked the blade up. He sheathed it. He turned to her. Welcome to Blackthorn Keep. She breathed, for what felt like the first time, since the Great Hall. That night, in a chamber on the east wing, with a bath drawn and a meal she did not eat, and a fire someone else had lit. Alina sat in a chair by the window and watched the snow come down on a valley that had been her enemy 4 days ago, and was now, technically, her home. Iris was not here. Her father was not here. Her mother had not been here for 12 years. Tristan was 3 valleys south, probably putting Celine to bed in a room she had been told her entire life would be hers. She was completely, entirely alone. A knock at the door. She did not turn. "Come in." The door opened. She knew who it was without looking. 3 days had taught her that. The cold came with him. It went out 3 feet before he did. Like weather walking ahead of a man. "I told the household to leave you. They didn't listen. They left a fire. They worry. About me, about you." She turned. He was leaning against the doorframe. Not in, not out. Half in shadow. He had not bathed yet. She could see the road on him still. The dust in the line of his jaw. The snow melted into the collar of his coat. She studied him. "Why did you do that?" "With Corin." Because he was right. He was. He lost 2 sons. "To your father. In a war he did not start. He had every right to spit. And he had every right to walk away from me when I asked him to stop. I did not ask him to forget. I asked him to stop. Those are different sentences. Most alphas would have made him kneel. Most alphas are running out of pack." She almost laughed. She did not. But for the first time in 4 days, the thing in her chest moved in the direction of laughter. And she filed that away, very carefully, for later examination. "You should sleep." "I won't, I know." He stepped back. He started to close the door. She heard her own voice before she had decided to let it out. "Damien." He stopped. "What? Why did you really wait for me?" "In the courtyard, at Ironhold." He looked at her. He answered honestly. "Because somebody had to." The door closed. She sat by the window for a long time after that. The snow kept falling. And somewhere, very quietly, under the silver moonstones she had thrown away on a high mountain trail 2 nights ago, under the white silk dress she had taken off, and would never put on again, under the name Alina Marrow that she had been preparing to take and would now never take, a new woman started, very slowly, to draw her first breath. She tried to sleep. She put her body in the bed. She closed her eyes. She listened to the wind outside the window, and the wind under the door, and the slow settling of an unfamiliar building, making the small sounds that old stone keeps make at night. But sleep did not come, because somewhere in this same keep, the man she had just married was awake too. She could feel him, not through any bond. The marking ceremony was tomorrow. There was no bond between them yet. What she felt was simpler than a bond. It was the awareness a woman has of another body in the same building when she has been chosen by that body and has chosen it back. The awareness of a fire still burning in a hearth, somewhere down a corridor she had not walked yet. She got up around 3. She crossed to the window. She put her palm flat against the cold glass. The cold of the glass bit her skin in a way that felt familiar. She thought about the way her father used to talk about this place at the dinner table. The way he would set his cup down too hard. The way his jaw would tighten when one of the messengers brought back news from the north. He had hated this place. He had hated the man who ran it. He had hated the men who had run it before that man. He had hated the very idea of the valley. And she was here now, standing in a window in his enemy's house, wearing the cloak his enemy's nephew had given her on a high pass. She wondered, very honestly, what her father would say if he could see her tonight. She decided, after some thought, that he would not have approved. She also decided that he would have understood. There was a difference. She was beginning to learn. Between approval and understanding. Approval was for the people who got to live the lives they had been promised. Understanding was for everyone else lots. Understanding was the bigger gift. Understanding required no rehearsal. Approval required a script. Her father had spent his life rehearsing the script. She had walked off the stage 4 nights ago. She did not know what came next. She knew that whatever came next, it would not be performed for an audience that had already stopped clapping for her, the moment a tall blonde woman in a red gown had stood up from the 3rd row. She went back to bed. Eventually, she slept badly. But she slept. They gave her a day, just one. Then they came for her at dawn with combs and oils, and a dress, the color of midnight river water. Yedyan did not speak much while the women worked. She watched, she corrected, she approved. The silence was its own form of instruction. Alina understood by mid-morning that her clothing was not being chosen by a woman who decorated brides. It was being chosen by a woman preparing a body for battle. The dress had no white in it, no silver thread, no moonstones. Whatever Alina had been at Ironhold was not what she was being asked to be tonight. She studied her face in the long mirror. 22 years old. A small bruise on her left wrist from the saddle. Hair falling in loose dark waves down her back. Hair that was hers now, not brushed for someone else's wedding. The woman in the mirror looked back. Alina did not entirely recognize her. Good, she thought. Good. Iris had not seen this version. Iris would not have known what to do with this version. Alina was not sure she did either. But the woman in the mirror had ridden 3 days through the high pass. The woman in the mirror had watched 8 men die in a ravine and counted them and kept her seat. The woman in the mirror had been thrown away in front of 300 witnesses and had not begged. The woman in the mirror was not the bride. The woman in the mirror was something else. Rowena finished with her hair. She set the comb down. She did not smile. She rarely smiled. But she met Alina's eyes in the glass and held them for a long second. You are not what we expected, I know. Good. That is the only thing that may save you. Alina filed that away, too. The great hall of Blackthorn was nothing like the hall she had walked out of 3 nights ago. The 2 halls were sisters in size and pride and stone, but they were sisters who had not spoken in 3 generations. Iron chandeliers where Ironhold had hung silver. Crimson banners where Ironhold had hung pale blue. The winter crest in 12 places where the marrow crest would have hung at home. A wolf's head ringed in thorns. The crest of a family that had decided, generations back, that anything that wanted to reach them would have to bleed for it. Alina walked the length of the hall alone. That had not been the plan. Rowena had offered to walk with her. Alina had refused. Some part of her wanted this to look like what it was. A woman walking into the courtyard of a pack that had every reason to hate her. Alone. By choice, she heard the whispers. The vocabulary was different from her home pack. The texture was the same. That is her. That is the one. That is the daughter of the man who. She kept her head level. She kept walking. She thought of the moonstones lying somewhere on a high, cold trail, and she thought of her father's voice the morning the messenger came from the iron ford. Damian stood at the far end, black coat, pale eyes. No crown, no ceremony of his own. He had given the ceremony to her by standing, as he had always stood, and letting her bring everything that came with this night to him. The elder of Blackthorn waited beside him, ancient, white-bearded. Eyes that had seen too many funerals. She climbed the steps. The elder lifted his voice. We gather to witness a claiming. The alpha of this pack has chosen a mate. Before the bond is sealed, any wolf in this hall may rise. If the grievance carries weight, the claiming will not proceed. Alina's stomach went cold. Damian had not told her about this part. She glanced at him. He did not look at her. He was watching the crowd. He had known. He had wanted her to come into it without the armor of warning. That whatever happened tonight would be hers, not his. Corin rose. Of course it was Corin. He stepped forward. The man from the gravel of the courtyard. The man with 2 dead sons. The man who had taken 1 step back yesterday, but had not stepped back forever. I object, the hall murmured. Damian did not move. Alina did not move. The elder turned slowly. State your grievance. This woman is the daughter of Edric Vance. Edric Vance killed my sons at the night raid. I will not bend my knee to her. I will not call her Luna. I cannot. And I speak for more wolves in this hall than just myself. The murmur grew. Other voices joined, not loud, but present. A low chorus of pain that had been waiting 12 years for permission to find its mouth. Damian stepped forward. She had expected anger. She had expected the cold. She had expected him to lift his voice the way her father used to lift his voice. The way alphas lift their voices. He did none of those things. He stepped down off the dais. He walked into the crowd. He stopped in front of Corin. You lost 2 sons. Yes, and you stepped back yesterday. Yes, and you are not stepping back tonight? No, Damian nodded. Slowly, once, then say it again, out loud. In front of every wolf who lost someone at Thornwood. Out loud. So they can hear you. So they know they are not alone. Corin's mouth opened. It closed. He had expected a fight. He had not expected to be invited to speak. He had not expected to be told his grief was bigger than the ceremony. I am listening, and so are they. Say what they cannot say. Say what every wolf in here, carrying one since the night the pyres burned. Say it, or step back. Those are your two paths tonight. Corin stared at him. Alina watched the man's hands. They were shaking. A long, terrible silence then. They were good boys, I know. And she is not him, no. And neither am I. No, Corin stepped back. The second time in 2 days. This time, without prompting, the elder closed his eyes. The hall exhaled. The objection was over. Damien climbed back to the dais. He looked at Alina for the first time since she had entered the hall. I am going to mark you now. I'll make it as fast as I can, she nodded. She turned her head. She exposed the line of her shoulder. She felt his breath first. The cold of it against her skin. Then the press of his mouth, then the pierce. It hurt, bright, hot. The way a knife hurts when you have been expecting a touch. Then, underneath the pain, something else, a thread, thin, new, stretching between them, quivering. Alive the bond. She felt it sit down in her chest beside the empty socket where the Tristan bond had been ripped out, and she felt the new thread test the shape of her. The way a stranger tests a chair before sitting in it. And she felt the strange, shy weight of someone else's presence, and mine like a candle, being lit in a room she had been sitting alone in for too long. What she felt from him through that thread was not what she had expected. She had expected dominance, the shape of an alpha claiming. She had expected the cold to bleed through the bond, the way the cold bled through his skin. What she got instead was loneliness, vast, ancient, the kind of loneliness that had not been put down in 13 years. The kind of loneliness a man builds for himself with both hands, because he has decided he is too dangerous to be touched. It almost knocked her over. He withdrew his teeth from her shoulder. He stepped back. His mouth was wet. He did not look at her. Your turn. She rose on her toes. She found the pulse in his throat. Slow, cold, steady. The pulse of a man who had spent his whole life refusing to let his heart speed up. She bit. His blood filled her mouth. It was cold, not cool, not chilled. Cold. The way a mountain spring is cold. The way river ice is cold when you crack it in February. Not the temperature of a living man. She froze. A heartbeat, too. She finished the mark. She drew back. She did not let her face show what she had tasted. She did not give the hall that. But when she looked at Damien, his eyes were already on her. And she knew that he knew. And he knew that she knew. And the small flicker that passed between them across the new fragile bond was a single understanding. You felt it. We will not speak of it, not here. Not tonight. No, the elder lifted his voice. The bond is sealed. All hail the Luna of Blackthorn Keep. The response was uneven. Some bowed, some did not. Some looked at her with a wariness that bordered on respect. Most just looked at her with the blank, curious patience of people waiting to see what was going to happen next. She felt no triumph. She felt no claim. She felt, instead, that she had just married a question she could not yet name. The celebration was small. By the standards of the hall she had walked out of, it would have been an insult. Tables half empty. A musician in the corner who played because he was paid to. Wolves who lifted cups to her because protocol required it and put them down again without looking at her face. She had expected worse. She got what she got. She drank 1 cup of pack wine and ate exactly enough food to be polite, and let the night drag itself toward the door it had been pulling toward since the marking. Rowena appeared at her elbow. It is time. She knew it was time. The hall had been thinning. The musician had laid his strings down. Damien had been at her side without touching her for 2 hours. She let herself be led. The corridor to the Alpha's chambers was longer than the corridor to her own. Older. Lit by fewer torches. The kind of corridor a man walks alone for a long time before he walks it with someone else. Damien opened the door for her. A fire burned in the hearth. The bed was made. The room smelled like cedar and cold stone. He closed the door behind them. And the sound of it closing was not the sound of a husband closing a door. It was the sound of a man preparing to refuse himself something he had not let himself want in a very long time. He turned to her. He stood 3 feet away. The space was deliberate. "There are things about me you do not understand," I gathered, "and tonight is not the night to learn them, all right." He blinked. He had expected an argument, or a question, or the wounded silence of a woman who had been brought to a wedding bed and then told no. "All right? You said 1 year. You said only if I decide it is so. Not tonight. We are not on a clock, you said." He stared at her. For a long moment, he did not breathe. Then, "I have not stood this close to a woman in 13 years. She did not have an answer to that. She did not push him for one. She crossed the room to the chair by the fire. She sat down. She slipped her shoes off. The dress was heavy. She did not undress in front of him. She just sat, and she watched the fire, and she made room. After a while, she heard him move. She heard him sit at the desk. She heard him do something that sounded very much like opening a book and not reading it. The fire burned down. She did not look at him. He did not look at her. She fell asleep in the chair. She woke up an hour before dawn. The first she noticed was that the room was colder than it should have been. The fire was still red. The room should have held heat. The room did not. The second thing she noticed was the frost. It started at the window behind the desk. It traced the stone of the sill. It crept along the wall in delicate fernleaf patterns. It climbed the column of the bedpost. It feathered across the leather binding of the book on the desk. She turned her head. Damien was asleep at the desk. His head was on his folded arm. His other hand was open on the wood. His breath was slow and even. He looked, for the first time since she had met him, like a man who was not standing watch. The frost was thickest around his open hand. She did not move. She watched the room slowly turn white around a sleeping man. And she thought, "Some men carry secrets. This one carries a winter." She did not tell him she had seen. She put the moment away the way she had put away so many moments lately. In the cool, dry corner of her mind where the things she could not solve yet went to wait. She had work to do. The first morning, she walked into the council chamber uninvited. 7 men around a long table, Rowena at the foot, Damien at the head. The murmur stopped when she opened the door. 7 faces turned. 7 faces did not look pleased. She did not wait to be told to sit. She crossed the room. She took the empty chair at Damien's right. "You are the Luna, so you should know what the Luna does. I will sit. I will listen. I will speak only when spoken to, until I understand the room. After that, I will not be quiet." Rowena's mouth moved. It was the closest thing to a smile Aelina had seen on her. Damien did not even look up from the map. "Continue." The map was the long border between Blackthorn and a small valley territory that had been disputed for 60 years. Aelina knew the valley. Her father had ridden patrols there when she was a child. She had stood at his elbow at a council table, just like this one, and watched him move tin markers across, just such a map. She did not. She listened. By the 3rd day, she said something. By the 5th, she asked a question. By the end of the 1st week, the council had stopped pausing when she walked in. She slept in her own chamber. He slept in his. He came to her door at night. He sat by her fire. They did not speak much. He read. She read. She watched him read. Some nights he came late, smelling of cold air and pine smoke, from a long ride on the borders. Some nights he did not come at all. Those were the nights she found herself unable to sleep, which was a piece of information she did not yet know what to do with. The pack watched her. She did not pretend not to notice. A council member fell ill in the 2nd week. A trade dispute came in from the eastern villages. A pup went missing in the South Wood. None of these were her affairs. All of them ended up on her desk because Damien stopped redirecting them. She handled them. She did not ask for permission. She made decisions she could defend. When she was wrong, she said so. When she was right, she did not gloat. She watched the older wolves of the packs stop looking at her like a daughter of Vance. She watched them start looking at her like a Luna. It was not love. It was not acceptance. It was a slow, grudging professional respect. A pack judging a piece of work. That would do for now. One night in the second week, she was crossing the upper corridor on her way back from the kitchens when she saw a sliver of light under the study door. It was past 3. The whole keep should have been asleep. She knocked. He did not answer. She pushed the door open. Damien was face down on his desk, cheek against an open ledger. One hand still curled around a quill. Asleep. She had never seen him sleep anywhere but the chair in her chamber. She stood in the doorway and watched him for longer than she would later admit. Then she crossed the room very softly, picked up the heavy coat draped over the back of the chair, and laid it across his shoulders. He did not stir, but the frost on the window pane behind him slowed. Not stopped. Slowed. She went back to her chamber. She did not sleep for the rest of the night. She lay in the dark and thought, very deliberately, about what she was beginning to feel, and whether she was permitted to feel it, and whether the man she was beginning to feel it for had ever once in his life been allowed to feel it back. She thought, too, about her sister. Iris would have liked Blackthorn. Iris liked any room with a fire in it. Iris liked old books. Iris liked windows that looked out on something bigger than a courtyard. Elena kept finding herself in chambers and corridors and small forgotten parts of the keep, looking at the shape of a room, and saying to no one in particular, Iris would have liked this. Iris would have hated that. Iris would have laughed at the way the kitchen women fold their bread. Iris was 3 valleys south, in a hall that had been Elena's home until the night the music stopped. Sleeping under the roof of an alpha who had walked Elena to the door of a sentence. Elena had not been ready to write, a man who had not been himself in months. A man whose pack had not yet noticed that he was not himself. A man who had brought a woman in a red gown into his bed, in the room that was supposed to be Elena's. She did not let the thought sit. She filed Iris too. Because what she could do for Iris from Blackthorn was learn this keep, learn this pack, earn the standing that would let her, when the time came, reach down and lift her sister out of whatever was happening in that valley. She slept around 6. She dreamed about Iris in a kitchen full of women, folding bread. She did not know yet that her sister, in that exact hour, was sleeping under a small window, with a stolen book in a satchel beside her bed, planning the ride she would make alone in 5 nights. Rowena found her the next morning in the solar. The older woman did not bother with greetings. She sat down across from Elena. She studied her for a long, uncomfortable second. You moved his coat last night? I did. He told you. He didn't have to. He has not slept under his own coat in 13 years. He noticed, and I think it is time you knew what you have walked into. Elena set her tea down. Yes. Rowena folded her hands. My nephew's grandmother, my mother, was a witch. Elena did not interrupt. She was a winter witch, from a line that had not introduced itself to wolves in a very long time. She hid her nature. She married my father. She bore my brother and me. When she was discovered, my father had her killed. He was not a man who tolerated what he did not understand. And I was 11 when it happened, and I remember every part of it, that a child should not be made to remember. The fire popped quietly. The killing did not end the magic. The magic does not work that way. It passed to the children. I got a little of it. Enough to read truth and lie. Enough to know things I should not know. My brother got more. Enough to make him careful with his temper for the rest of his life. And then he died at the iron ford, and the gift passed to his son. Damien, yes, Elena waited. Damien got the full inheritance. All of it. He generates cold, the way every other wolf you have ever known generates heat. His blood, his skin, his breath. The chamber you sleep in stays warmer than his, because his body is constantly pulling the heat out of his rooms. When he is calm, you do not notice. When he is angry, the room turns. When he is afraid, the windows ice over. When he loses control, she stopped. When he loses control, the room kills. What do you mean? Rowena's gaze did not soften. It steadied. He was 15, tell me. There was a girl. Her name was Mira. She was a tanner's daughter from the South Village. She was 16. He loved her. He had never loved anyone before her. He had not yet learned what loving someone did to him. Elena's stomach went very still. They went out to the spring meadow on a night, in the second week of his 16th summer. They had been planted for a month. They were children, Elena. They were children playing at being grown. He kissed her. They lay down in the grass. And he let himself feel. Oh, in the morning the goat herders found them. She was in his arms. She was blue. She was solid. The grass under her was glass. The flowers were preserved. The bees in the meadow were frozen mid-flight. The whole field was a still life. And in the middle of it was a 15-year-old boy who had not killed anybody on purpose in his entire life, holding the body of the only girl he had ever loved, and not knowing how he was supposed to walk home. Alina put her hand over her mouth. He has not allowed himself to feel deeply for any woman since. 13 years. He learned to control the cold by refusing to let his heart move. He calls it discipline. I call it survival. Either way, it works as long as he does not love. It works as long as he chooses an alliance over an attachment. It works as long as he marries an enemy and treats her like a treaty. A long pause. You understand, I understand. Do you? Alina looked into the fire. He thought I would be safe to marry, because I would hate him too much to love him back. He thought a Vance daughter, on the night of her humiliation, would never warm anything inside him. He chose me, because he believed I was the one woman in 3 territories whose heart could not reach him. Yes, and I have watched him these 2 weeks. The way he watches you when you speak in council. The way his hand stops shaking when you walk into a room. The way he sleeps under a coat you set on his shoulders. Rowena's voice softened, just at the edges. He is not safe from you. He thought he was. He is not. Alina did not speak for a long moment. Then, if he falls in love with me. Rowena did not answer. She did not have to. Outside the window, a thin morning snow had begun to fall. Alina watched it land on the sill. She thought about the room that had turned white around a sleeping man 11 nights ago. She thought about the way his pulse had felt when she had bit down on his throat at the marking, slow as a man who had been training his heart not to speed up. For 13 years. She thought about a meadow somewhere south, where a 16-year-old girl had been preserved like a glass. She did not know what she felt. She knew what she did not feel. She did not feel like turning the horse around. She did not feel like walking out of this, keep the way she had walked out of the last one. She felt, instead, the very small and very dangerous beginning of a sentence she had not been planning to write. I am going to stay. I am going to stay. And I am going to find out what this curse is built from. I am going to find out who built it. I am going to find out whether what they built can be unbuilt. And if it cannot, then I will find out how to live around it. Because the alternative is to be the second woman a 15-year-old boy had to walk away from in a meadow at sunrise. And I will not be the second meadow. A messenger from the southern border reached Blackthorn at dusk on the 14th day. A column of 50 riders had crossed the high pass. They carried the silver and blue of Ironhold. They had been spotted by the Eastern Watch at midday. They would reach the gates within 2 hours. Damian was in the courtroom. He read the message twice. He did not change expression. He sent the watch back with orders to allow the column to approach. Not enter. He found Alina in the council chamber. He's here. I know. I felt the messenger arrive. You don't have to come out. I do. He will use my absence. Alina, Damian. A pause. Promise me you will not engage. I won't engage. I will speak. He will speak. Then he will leave. He nodded. He did not believe her. He was right not to believe her. She went up to the wall. The column halted 40 yards out. 50 men in silver and blue, banners stiff in the wind. At the head of the column, on a horse she remembered from her childhood, sat Tristan Marrow. She had not seen him in 15 days. He looked the same. He also looked entirely different. The dark hair was the same. The autumn leaf eyes were the same. But his face had a tightness she did not remember, as if a strap somewhere behind his cheekbones had been pulled half a notch too tight. His pupils caught the failing light wrong. They held a shine that did not belong to wolves. He looked up at her on the wall. Alina, Tristan, you come down, now. Or I will burn this gate. You will burn nothing. Your 50 men cannot take this keep and you know it. You came with 50 because that was the largest number you could move without your council asking why. His mouth tightened. I came for what is mine. There is nothing here that is yours. You wear my mark. I wear nothing of yours. Your mark went to a woman in a red gown. In front of 300 witnesses, you released me. I have a witness in every wolf who stood in that hall. You were confused. I was awake, for the first time in my life. I was awake. He stole you. He offered. I chose. Tell yourself a different story if it helps. But the men around you, Tristan, every one of them was in that hall. Every one of them watched. Every one of them knows. You did not lose me. You walked away from me. And now you are standing 50 miles from your border in the cold because your pride is sore. A long silence on the wall and on the road. Tristan's hands tightened on his reins. His voice came out low. You spread your legs for my enemy because I bruised your pride. The wall behind her went still, a breath, 2 breaths, and then the cold arrived. She did not see Damien move. He had been beside her 1 heartbeat. The next he was gone. The next he was at the gate. The next he was through it. She had heard stories about alphas in motion. She had never been close enough to one to feel it. He crossed the 40 yards faster than any man should be able to cross 40 yards on foot. He reached Tristan before Tristan's hand reached his sword. He pulled the alpha of iron hold off his horse by the throat. With one hand, he held him at arm's length. Off the ground, Tristan's boots kicked at empty air. The horse skittered. The 50 men behind him did not move, could not move. The cold that came off Damien Winter in that moment was not the cold of a man losing his temper. It was the cold of a man choosing whether or not to end a sentence the world had been writing for 3 generations. Ice traveled up Damien's hand. White, crystalline. It crossed his wrist. It climbed his arm. It crawled up Tristan's throat where the fingers held him. Tristan's lips went blue. Say it again. Tristan could not speak. Say it again. Tristan's eyes bulged. Elena ran in from the wall, through the gate, across the gravel, past the column of frozen men. She reached Damien, and she did not touch the arm that held Tristan. She touched the other one. The one hanging at his side. The one wreathed in white frost. Damien, he did not look at her. He insulted you. I don't care. He insulted you in front of his men. And mine. And yours. I do not care, Damien. Look at me. He is not worth my sister's life. Iris is still in Ironhold. If you kill him here, the pack he leaves behind will go for her. Damien. Please, look at me. He looked at her. The white had bled into his eyes. The silver was gone. The pupils were the color of pure ice. His pulse, where her hand wrapped around his wrist, was beating so slowly she could count the gaps between beats. She held his gaze, put him down, a long moment, a longer one. He dropped Tristan. Tristan crumpled into the gravel. He gagged. He clutched at the burned line of his throat where the ice had touched skin. He coughed up something that might have been blood. Damien turned to the 50 men. His voice was not loud. It carried anyway. Take your alpha. Leave my border. If I see one of you again, I will not give you the courtesy of a warning. Tonight is the warning. Use it well. The Ironhold men did not need to be told twice. They got their alpha back onto his horse. They turned the column. They rode. She watched them go. She turned to thank Damien. He was already swaying. She caught the front of his coat just as his knees gave out. He went down on the gravel. His weight was wrong. Heavier than a man should be. As if every drop of warmth in his body had been turned to denser, colder material. The frost was not just on his hand anymore. It had moved up his arm, across his shoulder. It was crawling along his collarbone in delicate, radiant patterns. It had reached the line of his jaw. His eyes found hers.